Well, we're coming today to our study on the fourth priority. We're in chapter 19. We're talking about parenting or how to be a great parent. And again, I hope that you have studied thoroughly the three chapters on parenting in this third priority we're looking at. This one of the things I want to talk about today, just a couple points that conclude our conversation over the last three videos. But one of the things parents need to do in order to be great parents is you got to learn somehow to improve on how we show our children that we love them. I love the story. It's a true story. A friend told me, he said that he was home one day and he and his wife were in another room, I guess a den or something, and the son comes in the door with a friend and said he and his wife were in the den embracing. And so the kid comes around the corner, he's got his friend with him, and he walks in the den first, he sees his mom and dad embracing. And he says, hold it, to his friend. He said, hold it. And goes back into the kitchen, he says, we can't go in there now. He said, his friend said, well, why? Why can't we go in there? He says, well, they're in there doing it again. They're in there smooching. And then his friend said this, it must be great to have a father who loves your mother. I don't even know who my dad is. And so again, the impact of a home, what goes on inside of a home, is so critical. And showing love to your children is key. Now, how do you do that? Let me give you some thoughts today. First of all, with your time. I think the thing that children want more and need more than anything else, they need our time. And with the crazy schedules we've got today, with all the pressures, with all the things we engage in, I live in Dallas, Texas. The busyness of people is just crazy. And usually when we're busy and have a lot going on, and we're trying to be the proverbial juggler, keeping everything moving, the thing that often drops, the ball that drops, are relationships, and often it's those relationships with children. Somebody passed this along to me, the 7 worst ways to spend time with your kids. Let me give you these. Number 7, serve as their human quarter machine at the video arcade. 6, have the NBA game of the week on while you're playing Monopoly with them. Ugh. 5, read the paper while helping them with their algebra assignment. 4, go to the local high school football field to practice your short irons and have them collect the golf balls when you're done. Number 3, suggest they take a nap with you on a beautiful Sunday afternoon. 2, drive them to Scouts and read a magazine in the car while the Scout leader instructs them on how to tie knots. 1, take them to your office on Saturday and have them color while you work. Worst ways to spend time with your children. The average dad, studies say, spends an average of 37 seconds a day. This is with small children. 37 seconds a day. A number of years ago, Charles Francis Adams, the 19th century political figure and diplomat, kept a diary, and one day he entered this in his diary. Went fishing with my son today. A wasted day. His son, Brooke Adams, also kept a diary, which is still in existence to this day. And on that same day, Brooke Adams wrote in his diary, went fishing with my father today. The most wonderful day of my life. I tell you, it breaks my heart to think about all the children whose hearts are broken because their fathers didn't spend time with them. The old song, Cats in a Cradle by Sandy and Harry Chapin. You probably remember the words. If you're not, then you might want to look those up again. I'll read a couple of these, but he says, my child arrived just the other day. He came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away, and he was talking before I knew it. As he grew, he'd say, I'm going to be like you, Dad. I'm going to be like you. And the cats in the cradle, the silver spoon, the little boy blue, and the man in the moon. When you're coming home, Dad, I don't know when, but when we'll get together then. You'll know we'll get together then and have a good time then. The boy turns 10, the same story, his dad's never around. And then finally, you might remember the song ends up, as I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, he'd grown up just like me. My boy was just like me. The cats in the cradle, the silver spoon, little boy blue, the man in the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then, Dad. We're going to have a good time then. That then often rings in the hearts of many children, and it has a devastating effect on their lives because their dads didn't show up and spend that time together. One businessman's gift I read about was this. He was asked, what are you giving your kids for Christmas? He said, I'm giving my son a piece of paper. It's going to read, to my son, I give you 1 hour each week and 2 hours every Sunday to be used as you wish. You see, what he was giving him was not money. It wasn't giving him a tangible gift that he bought at a store. He was giving him time, a great gift. I think you also show your love and communicate your love with your children through your interests, to do things they want to do. I remember my son years ago asked me to go paintballing with him. Well, I knew a little bit what paintballing was about, and I refused. Finally, I think I gave a talk on spending time with your kids and doing things they wanted to do, and I felt guilty, so I decided I'd go paintballing. Well, when I got out there, it was a nightmare. I mean, you might know the game of paintballing. You're supposed to hide around these barriers, and all of a sudden you come out, and if you hit another person with a paintball, they're out. They're out of the game. Well, I'm rushing at my son, thinking I've got him, and I'm going to get him out of the game, and I didn't set the trigger right, and I pulled the trigger. I'm 10 feet from him, and the gun won't go off. So obviously, he's laughing on the ground, and he shoots me with one hand blindfolded, and I'm out of the game. Never went back again. The third way, I think, to show that you want to love your children, communicate that love, is by listening. Somebody said it this way. A wise man was asked one day, he said, what's the most important quality in life? The man said, attention. And then the friend said, well, then would you mind elaborating and expanding on that a little bit? The wise man said, yes, attention, attention. He said, well, would you give me just a little bit more insight of that? He said, okay, attention, attention, attention. A young boy, and that is critical in terms of impacting our children by spending time with them and listening. A teenager said once to a friend of his, he said, I'm just a comma. He said, a what? Yeah, I'm just a comma. And then he explained by saying this. He said, what do you mean you're a comma? He said, well, I'll be talking with my dad, and he'll say something, and then when I'm starting to talk, he pauses. He never interrupts me, but when I'm through, he starts up right where he left off. What I say doesn't really mean anything. I'm just a comma. An essay was written by a young boy, his first essay in school. His topic was, what my dog means to me. He said, my dog means somebody nice and quiet to be with. He does not say do like my mother, or don't like my father, or stop like my big brother. My dog Spot and I just sit together quietly, and I like him, and he likes me. I love that. I think the fourth thing that's important in this whole thing is to be a great mom or dad is mom and dad that affirm their child in every way. There's nothing as important as building up the value and the worth of your children. Now, let me say again what we said earlier in the 4 priority videos and in the book, that the scripture says, love the Lord your God, Matthew 22, verse 36, 7, 8, and 9. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. There's a second command unto the first, Jesus said, that you love your neighbor as yourself. Or, translated, love your children as you love yourself. And so what he's saying there is that I will only be able to love someone else, and in this case, my husband or my children, to the degree that I love myself. And I will only be able to love myself to the degree that I know how much God loves me. So you see, getting squared away in your own life, your own significance as parents, and knowing what God thinks about you and how highly he esteems you, that he thinks you're his masterpiece, and he just can't take his eyes off of you. That's how he thinks about you. When you begin to internalize that truth and look at yourself that way, then you'll be able to highly esteem your children and love them in ways that will be life-changing for them. The final thing I'd say If you're going to be a great parent, then you got to be spiritually dependent. And what that means, simply and yet profoundly put, your children need a mom, they need a dad that love Jesus and are committed to following him and pleasing him and glorifying him in every aspect of their lives. That's what your kids need to see most of all. Well, let me close with a couple of quotes and a story. One of my friends said it this way: you have a responsibility as a parent to your children. On Judgment Day, God is not going to ask, did you become vice president or woman of the year? He is going to ask, did you fulfill your responsibilities as a parent? That's powerful. Carl Jung said it this way: if there is anything we wish to change in a child, we should first examine it and see whether it is not something that could be better changed in ourselves. Well, I think that's about it. I've got a lot of stories and a lot of things we could talk about this, but again, let me just reiterate, your children, to a very large extent, are going to become like you. So the question is, are you like you want them to become? You see, you're going to have to live with your product a long time. You think about that real hard.
Thanks for listening to the 4 Priorities podcast. This podcast, along with the 4 Priorities book, are designed to aid, support, and encourage you in your work of making disciples. If you haven't purchased your copy of the 4 Priorities, you can do so at www.thetolsongroup.com. Please subscribe to this podcast and follow John on social media for more resources and teaching. See you next time on the 4 Priorities podcast.